Yeah, I'm in conversation with the visionary sacred artist Ekabhumi Charles Ellik. Welcome once again, Ellik. To continue our conversation, I would like to ask, how is the sacred art of Sanatana Dharma different from that of other religions?
I'm going to speak first from a Western anthropological point of view, and then I'll speak as a practitioner. From a Western anthropological point of view, it's not that much different. It serves as a focal point for devotion during religious ceremonies and spiritual practices. It carries a certain amount of cultural significance. It usually portrays deities. And many, many religions have art that serves in that way. But as a practitioner, what I would say that is so beautiful about this art is that it's like the language has been preserved. The grammar and the context is intact. This tradition hasn't been interrupted. We have a visual language. Each of these images is like a book that literally can be read. I could sit and look at the image of a deity and not only tell you a bit about the deity, but also about your likely experience if you do practices with that deity. Likely magical powers or virtuous expressions that you will have when you accomplish those practices associated with the deity. Even whether those practices are likely to come quickly or slowly. Every part of the deity's image carries significance. Nothing is just pure ornament. Even ornament itself is significant, telling us how worldly the deity is or how transcendental, how powerful the deity is or how subtle and powerful. So the image of the deity really should be thought of as less like a creative expression, and it's certainly not so much about the personal experience of the artist. It really should be thought of more as like literature, as a very ancient form of pictogram, as a kind of visual writing. And it's scripture in form. It's scripture, it's beautiful scripture. It's beautiful scripture in the shape of divine beings and the magical landscape in which they inhabit. And in that sense, I feel it is distinct from other traditions that are normally depicting something imaginary. Hindu sacred art is functional. It serves to support spiritual practice and serves to shift your consciousness. And even within that framework, when we talk about it as a functional item, it's not depicting something imaginary. It itself is real. The appearance of, say, Ganesha in the form of sacred art is the presence of Ganesha, and it will have the influence on you characteristic of Ganesha himself. So the image is carrying the transmission power of the deity. It is what it depicts. Just like Sanskrit, the vibration of the sound is what it describes. In this sense, I feel that the art is very distinctive from most other religions. Most other religions, the art is an illustration depicting something else that is elsewhere or far away or imaginary or mythological. Hindu sacred art is designed to carry and hold and embody the energy that it depicts.
Yeah, that brings me to the next question. How is this Hindu sacred art different from the modern European art?
I love modern European art. I make European art. I respect it tremendously, and I think it has its own spiritual power. For example, one famous American artist, Jackson Pollock, who's considered so quintessentially modern, was deeply spiritual. That said, it's very clear what the distinction is. Modern European-based art that arose from the avant-garde movement in Europe, is really oriented towards the artist and the experience of the artist. It arises from and it describes the artist's experience. Hindu sacred art is transpersonal. It's really not about the artist's personal experience at all. Very little. There's not, even by Western standards, much creative freedom in Hindu sacred art. Hindu sacred art is more like literature. It's like you're copying a scripture, or you're writing a poem on a theme that has been written about many, many times before. It's really oriented towards the deity. So to really boil it down, European-based modern art is all about the artist. Dharmic art from the Sanatana Dharma traditions is all about the deity. Very simple. Not about the artist.
Earlier, you mentioned about Yantra. I would like to know, what is Sri Yantra and how important it is in sacred art?
Well, Sri Yantra is like the superstar of yantras. So on posters, in rock and roll shops, in yoga studios, you see it on t-shirts, you see it everywhere. When people talk about sacred geometry, you normally see this is the default image that they bring up. Even the logo for the California Institute of Integral Studies uses Sri Yantra as their logo. It's everywhere. It is literally the most famous piece of sacred geometry.
Okay,
that
so
exists.
I think you did work on that in your book as well.
Yes.
So this is Ellik's book, the Bhakti Colouring Book.
Yes. So in my book, the Bhakti Colouring Book, I cover many, many different deities and their sacred geometry and their images in yantras. But in particular, the Sri Yantra is most closely associated with goddess Lalita Tripura Sundari, the beauty of the three worlds. So Shri literally means auspicious. So it is the auspicious yantra. And yantra means device. So it is the most auspicious of all the devices. And it's because the interlocking triangles that you see here are meant to describe the vibrational quality of the universe itself. The interplay of the masculine dynamic, which we call Shiva, and the feminine dynamic, which we call Shakti. And so we see them interacting here at the center of the yantra, and then you see the lotus petals spreading that energy outward. And then you see the four gates, which help to contain that power so that it can be held in a useful configuration for the practitioner. So this yantra is very famous as an emblem of Shakti, of Tantra, and of power, but not many people really understand how it functions. So as a container, as a seat of power, it can be used to invoke Tripura Sundari, that specific goddess, who we know as Lalita. It can be invoked this more abstract quality of Shri, of auspiciousness, this feminine dynamic of auspicious power. But it's not a logo, it's not a telephone number. You can invoke other powers into it. And it is used, for example, for Kamakya Ma. They also, within that tradition, use Sri Yantra. Many people use this yantra for goddess Lakshmi. And these goddesses have a lot of similarities. There's a similar resonance, but they are distinct as well. And so this yantra is, like you might say, a wine glass can be used for milk, but it's perfect for wine. And you could pour champagne, but isn't champagne more delightful in a champagne flute? Yeah. So there are many yantras that you can invoke this goddess into, but this one is best. It's the most auspicious. It's, in this sense, it will give us the easiest access to power, and therefore it will feel the most powerful.
Yeah. So before we wind up this conversation, like my viewers, I'm also quite eager to know, how did it all begin? You know, your spiritual practice, your journey to India, then your sacred art work. Yeah, please.
It was actually pretty typical for a lot of Americans. I went to an asana yoga class with my wife, and
that was in the US. Yeah.
Yes, in the US. And I thought it was really brilliant, the sequence of postures, the breathing practices, and I thought there must be some brilliant logic behind it. But when I went up and asked the teacher, like, why do we do things the way? Why do we initiate every posture with the right foot? The teacher couldn't answer me. That started me on a whole journey that led me to my first guru, who could answer that question. And with the study of that teacher, I came to also understand more about the deities. I had no interest in Hindu deities or statues. It seemed like very pagan, this worshipping a brass statue. It seemed idolatry to me, you know? I had no understanding that the statue, that the artwork is like a road sign pointing towards the deity. The object itself may be an echo of that deity's power, but it should not be mistaken as being the deity itself in its entirety. It is a launching point for a relationship with the deity. So, but I didn't understand that at the time. I thought the whole thing was kind of crazy and weird. So I began doing practices and they started working. And I didn't understand why these practices worked, not just the asana practices, but I also began studying Ayurveda and Jyotish. I began studying puja and doing ritual, and I really wanted to understand why they worked. So I took Diksha with that guru, and after taking Diksha with the guru, he initiated me into Kali sadhana. And one time we were just walking around in public, he was taking us to a class, and he looked at me suddenly, and he said, "Where's your picture of Kali?" I said, What picture of Kali? And he goes, "You should have a picture of Kali in your wallet like a sweetheart, like your beloved."
Okay.
And I said, "Really? Okay." So that started me on a journey to look for an image of Kali that made sense to me. But most of the images I saw of her looked very angry or even confused, or even some say that she's sticking out her tongue because she's embarrassed, which is, I frankly, I don't care what your readers think. I think that's silly. I think it's dumb. Kali, embarrassed? Hogwash. So I felt like I needed to draw an image of her that I could keep in my wallet to remind me of her like my sweetheart. I did end up finding an image that worked temporarily, but I kept getting this little whisper when I'd sit and meditate and do japa. It's like, you could do this. You could draw this. I am an artist. I do have a degree in art, but Hindu sacred art is so complicated. There's so many rules. There's so many different styles and historical traditions. I just felt overwhelmed. But finally, after a couple of years of just like, I can't do this, I'm not worthy, it's too complicated, it's too much. Finally, I felt very inspired one day. I just felt like I had a clear image of her from all of my meditation. And so in 8 hours, I drew an image of her as I understood her at the time. And that image has now been published and is being worshipped on altars all around the world. And I think that that's purely Ma's grace. I don't take credit for that. So my experience of Ma was as Paravak, as the great mother. And Paravak is specifically a form of Kali as the creatrix, as the goddess of time. She's the creator and the destroyer. So this is the Kashmiri version of Kali, as the creatrix. And I saw her in this form in which she almost resembles Saraswati, carrying a book and a veena, or a book and a mala. And so I drew her in this form, and I didn't really understand what was happening, but I was so inspired, and I wanted to draw her as beautiful and loving. And it ended up actually matching this ancient goddess, and I actually got hired by a scholar who wrote a book about the tradition. So that was the very first image that I ever drew of a goddess, was of goddess Paravak, and that image ended up being in the book Tantra Illuminated, and has now been reproduced and printed and is literally being worshipped. And that was, it's just pure grace. It's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Beautiful. I hope our viewers have enjoyed this brief conversation with Ellik. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, each moment with him. A formal or informal conversation is an amazing, priceless, precious opportunity for learning. That's my experience. So before we wind up this episode, dear Ellik, please do you have some words to share with our viewers, dear viewers? Yeah.
As a Hindu convert, as somebody who came into this tradition late in life from a different culture, I wish I could convey to all of my friends in India, especially my Hindu friends, but anyone born on this continent, in this culture, how precious this tradition is, how much beauty and wisdom and power is within it, and that it's not just a cultural artifact. It's not just superstition and mythology. This is living Vidya. I wish I could show you from an outsider's eyes how incredibly precious it is. And I would hope that everyone who's watching this will see these images with fresh eyes, that realize that they function, that they communicate, that they are living books of wisdom, and will not take them for granted any longer. We'll actually reapproach them with a sense of gratitude for what the ancestors, I'll say the ancestors of our Sanatana Dharma have passed down through their hard work and their generosity, their fidelity, and their humility to keep the fidelity of this work across time. And that it has arrived in this modern era intact. And how rare this is on the whole planet, in humanity, in the millions of years of human experience, how precious this knowledge is and how valuable and rewarding it is to understand it. When I was in college, I didn't like Indian art because I liked creative expression, modern art.
Okay.
I didn't understand how to read it. It's like I don't enjoy much reading song lyrics, but I love hearing them.
Okay.
Once you can hear the music and it comes alive, then they're very beautiful. It's the same thing with this art. When you don't understand it, it's not so engaging. When you understand how to read it, when you understand what it symbolizes,
it's more melodious.
It's like hearing beautiful music. So this is like sheet music for the soul. And I hope that all of you will take time to learn a little bit of it and be rewarded.
Thank you so much, Ellik. Thank you.
You're welcome.